Alright, what's going on everybody? So originally I wasn't going to make a video for probably 2 weeks because there honestly isn't any news about anything, like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom 2, the Asus ROG Ally. There isn't really much to talk about in terms of those things. I've already predicted most of it correctly, so there isn't anything new for me to say, but there are a few videos out there that I noticed that are kind of throwing people under the bus who aren't too excited about Tears of the Kingdom, and I think it's okay to not be that excited for a game that has taken 6 years to develop and hasn't really had any trailers to showcase anything new about the game. For some reason, the Nintendo community, or a side of the Nintendo community, is just warranting informationless trailers, which also warrant a lot of not so okay things that Nintendo is currently doing. For some reason, they're trying to keep a lot of what Tears of the Kingdom is under wraps, and I'm not exactly sure because that's not really helping them. Sure, it's Zelda and you can do whatever you want with it, but a lot of the things that people are comparing Tears of the Kingdom to, they're also comparing to God of War Ragnarok. And that game has been in development for 4 years, and it seemed to present a lot of new story elements as well as the main Kratos versus Thor fight that we were looking forward to. Now, honestly, that's everything that we wanted from Ragnarok, and it showed a lot of other new elements. And the main criticism is that people shouldn't be not too excited, because if they're not too excited about the game, then they're just hating on it. A lot of the stuff I've seen online is just shows that people want to see new things about Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild 2. They don't want to see the same old things, but the trailers have literally shown clips that look like they came straight from Breath of the Wild. And you can't say the same about the first trailer of God of War Ragnarok. It looked like a completely different game, but people were digging deeper and saying, oh, there's some reused assets. Now that's ridiculous. I think if something's presented as a new thing that ultimately shows a lot of new content, then there shouldn't be any ridicule for it having the same assets, because obviously the assets are so buried deep in Ragnarok that it seems like a new game. And that happens with a lot of sequels. They have a lot of reused assets, which makes sense. But for the most part, Tears of the Kingdom, the initial first trailer shows Link skydiving with a new model. So that kind of made me hopeful that it would have mostly new content, just like God of War Ragnarok. But then you see him go down into Hyrule, and it pretty much looks like the same Hyrule that we had in the previous game, except the castle is floating now. There's a lot of stuff in that game that seems like they added side missions to it, and the story elements seem like what we wanted from part 1. Now, I'm not an advocate for sequels that give us what we should have had in part 1, like fighting with the rest of the heroes of Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom. We should have gotten that in part 1, but I didn't play the expansion, so it might have been in the expansion, so we might have already gotten that. But if you want to make a more accurate comparison as to why people aren't that excited about Tears of the Kingdom, there were a lot of reused assets with Resident Evil 3 Remake, and there were things that were in Resident Evil 2 Remake that they made into new story elements in Resident Evil 3 Remake. So the fact that there wasn't too much new except for cutscenes and mostly the areas were pretty much the same had a lot of people discontent with the content in Resident Evil 3 Remake. I just mostly find it ridiculous that people are ridiculing others and saying that they're haters and dismissing them because they aren't that excited about Tears of the Kingdom. I think the fact that they're not excited is a very logical thing. If you don't see a lot of new content, then maybe you're not going to be as excited for the sequel as you were in the first one, because you pretty much already played all of that for about 200 hours to begin with. I just think a lot of the time the Nintendo online community, at least, don't allow too much freedom in terms of opinions. I think either you have to love Zelda or you have to hate it, is the notion what I'm getting with a lot of Nintendo fans online. If you don't like Tears of the Kingdom that much, that must mean you hate it. It's like 9-year-old mentality. I don't understand everyone online. They either have to stick together or they're not together. That's why a lot of people in the world don't get along that much, because we have this kind of toxic mentality. Either you are a part of the substance or you're not. I think you can just be okay with it or think it's meh. I think Tears of the Kingdom looks meh. I think the newest trailer was cool, but a lot of what they showed was the skydiving, cutscenes, and the fusion system, which is a new feature that seems to bring what was in the cooking system of Breath of the Wild into the weapons, so we can mix the weapons any combination we want for any result that we can get, like mixing an eyeball with an arrow so it can become a homing missile. That seems like something the team has had fun with, but for some reason I just wanted to see more. I don't want to see this weird system that's going to have a lot of Fortnite-like results with it. It just seems like they're trying to appeal to a specific audience with this new system. And I think the system is cool, and I think it will be a lot of fun, but it also seems like it's going to warrant a lot of speed running and game breaking stuff that I don't think Nintendo can patch properly when people do find these glitches. So it is kind of a dangerous sort of power that you have in part 2 that's going to make the game probably a lot easier. I enjoyed the weapon breaking system in part 1. I thought it added some kind of difficulty to it and methodicism to it. It really made me think what I was going to do in the next 10 minutes while I still had a weapon, and it made me kind of appreciate the weapons I got more. Even though there were some people that didn't like the braking system, I can understand why they didn't like the braking system, because you lose the weapon. Losing things is bad. I understand that it can make gaining a weapon feel shallow at times, so I can understand that. It's just weird how when people were saying that back then, I think there were also a lot of hate for people that didn't like the weapon breaking system, but there were also a lot of people that could understand it. It's an acquired taste, and I think a lot of what they're showing in Tears of the Kingdom isn't quite an acquired taste, but it just doesn't make me as excited as I thought I would be watching the semi-final trailer of Tears of the Kingdom. But anyway, I do think it is okay to not feel as excited as other people are. I think saying someone has a specific opinion about a game and saying that it is toxic to feel a certain way about content that you're eventually going to buy is toxic, because they are consumers and they are eventually going to pay for this content with their own money, so they can be the judge of it before it comes out. But there's too much of a sort of cult-like behavior with these types of contents and saying that you have to like it because it's this. I think that in itself is toxic, and it harbors a lot of hate with specific people trying to just give their honest opinion. And they're saying that these people are going against the grain, but I just think they're being honest, and sometimes honesty doesn't sound like what you want to hear. And there's a lot of people out there that just can't handle the truth. As cliche as it sounds, I think it's okay to hear every type of opinion, because you can understand different sides and you can make potentially a better product. But no matter what, Nintendo will see these as opinions. Even if other people try to break those opinions down, Nintendo will ultimately look at those opinions, and for the next Zelda game, they will have better trailers from the start, because those opinions do matter. And a lot of people want you to think that people that have opinions that are different from theirs, that they don't matter. And regardless of what you think, Nintendo is still going to see those opinions as important, especially if they are the majority or minority. It doesn't matter, because it is still a big enough number for them to pay attention to it. And I think garnering hate for people that think differently is in itself toxic, and there are a lot of YouTubers out there that are saying that people that think differently are just haters, and I think that's false. I think the people that are saying that are actually the haters. They're the ones that spread that word out, and they're the ones that put a thought into your mind and try to manipulate you into thinking that thinking a specific way is wrong. That's just generally the wrong way to think, especially if you want to be a part of a community. And I think if you hate Zelda, if you like it, you're welcome here. I don't really care either way. I think the latest trailer, even though it had a good amount of content, was kind of long overdue, and we should have gotten that amount of newer content in the span of at least 3 trailers. But it seems like this is the only trailer that is saying to its fans, please buy my product. It's been 6 years, and here's a trailer that's finally going to get your attention. I think that's a long time to test your consumers' patience for. I think that's a dangerous amount of time. I think 6 years is so long that if some people are discontent with it, that makes sense. It's been 6 years. Those people have graduated from high school in the time that it took to make this game. I think they're different people, and I think a lot of people have the right to think a certain way about something they've invested so much time in. And then when they give us the trailer, it shows a lot of the same assets, not even a different Hyrule. If Hyrule were to look completely different and be destroyed or built anew, that would make more sense, but it seems like it's the same old Hyrule with Skyward Sword type elements, which makes sense why people wouldn't have a ton of faith in that formula, since Skyward Sword wasn't particularly a great Zelda game, and some people are saying it's the worst one. I think if they were to add elements like Wind Waker had, where you can go to different islands opposed to just falling from a sky platform to the same old Hyrule, would have been a bigger improvement. I think a lot of people that like Nintendo games just like the same old thing anyway. And that's the reason why I kind of stopped supporting them, because they just come out with the same old stuff that have a different color and slight tweaks, and they sell it as a new game because they don't want to sell it for too much. But at this point, just sell it for the full amount that it's supposed to be and come up with a new game, because I'm kind of tired of the same reused assets that Nintendo has been doing for a long time. And regarding God of War Ragnarok, I think it has enough story elements presented to seem like a new game entirely, and it has new locations. It shows a lot of new locations, or if they showed older locations, they seem to look completely different. But for the most part, Hyrule undoubtedly looked exactly the same when they showed it to us. And that's why a lot of people aren't that excited. They don't hate it, they just think it's meh. And because they're not as excited as you shouldn't take it like a 9-year-old getting rejected from their crush for the first time. It's okay, it's just a video game. Nobody really cares. It looks meh. Some people think it looks meh, and I think that's fine. I think if you dismiss others' opinions, then that's bad. That is straight up bad, and that's not healthy for any community. And that's all I gotta say. Hope you guys have a good one. Later.